These are my favorite 10 board games that cost less than $20. Now, quick note before I jump into the games. I'm talking about US dollars as of today. And if you know anything about board game prices, they do tend to fluctuate from time to time. However, I did find these prices on reputable websites like Amazon or Walmart or Target or Miniature Market. I didn't put the games in a very particular order. I mean, some of the more complicated ones are saved for the end, but I'm going to move through them quickly. Hopefully as we go along, something will stick out to you that you think will work well for your group, or maybe a game that will work well as a gift for someone else. First up here, we have the game of King Domino, which is a pretty fun, fast, light game for 2 to 4 players. The basic idea is pretty simple. You're going to be drafting tiles to place into your little 5x5 or 7x7 kingdom. These tiles have different land types on them, like forest or water or pastures. The basic way to score points is you take the number of crowns in each section of land types and then multiply that by the total number of that land type you have. So for example, if you have 3 forest stars in a little area and there are 8 total tiles in that area, you're going to score a total of 24 points. Now this all seems really simple so far, but the real hook that kind of holds the game together and makes it fun is how you draft the tiles. The 4 tiles you have up there to draft are always placed in order from lowest value to highest value. Typically, the lower ones are not worth as many points and the higher ones are worth more points. But the player who takes the lowest value tiles can be the first person to draft in the next round. And whoever has that highest value tile is going to be the last person to draft in the next round. So you're always trying to weigh the importance of the tiles you have out there. Is it worth to go for a more valuable one this time, knowing that your drafting order is going to be lower in the next round? Up next here we have Jaipur. Now Jaipur is a 2-player only card game that sounds really simple at first. You're just drafting cards and trying to get simple set collection, and whenever you play sets of cards like 4 purple, you get to get little tiny tokens that give you endgame score. A couple things that make it interesting is, first of all, the timing of when you play your set. So the first player to play a group of reds is going to score more points than the next player to play reds. Like the value of the red tokens you're going to get goes down the more players that grab it. So you're trying to time like, should I go for this red now? But also you're rewarded for bigger sets of cards. So if you go for the red now, but you might have scored more points if you had a set of 3 or 4 or 5, like a bigger set later on in the round. But what really makes it interesting is the way you actually pick up the cards. So if I want to pick up a card on my turn, there's a few cards laid out for me. I can just grab one of those cards and take it to my hand. But if I want to take more than one card, let's say that 2 reds flip out and they're very valuable and I'm going for reds, I can't pick up 2 cards at once unless I replace them with 2 other cards from my hand. But then on top of that, each player has like a stockpile of camels, which is kind of a plot twist at this point, right? Basically what camels can do is that instead of throwing away cards from your hand, you can throw away camels. So you might have one player who's winning the round right now, but the other player is holding a stack of like 7 camels. Well, why that matters is at some point during the round, they might choose to pick up 4 cards from the center, take all 4, and then just replace them with camels, which is totally junk and trash for the other players, right? So it's kind of like an interesting resource timing mechanism. You're like, okay, when do I hold on to the camels long enough? When do I use them and throw them out there? Basically, you just give your opponent poison at that point. It doesn't help them at all to get the camels. Now, like lots of card games, it's very, very lucky. But thankfully, every round is pretty fast. So it's not really a game to play if you want some really deep, immersive strategy, but more of just kind of like, hey, let's deal up a round. We'll play 3 or 5 or 7 turns of it really quickly. Each round of it might last, 5 minutes. Up next here, we have the game of Cafe. Now, Cafe is probably the most aesthetically pleasing of all the games I have on the list today. And also it's a little more strategic than the first 2 games I talked about today. So in Cafe, what you're gonna be doing is you're gonna be drafting cards. And the interesting thing about the drafting of the cards is you always have to cover up some of your old cards. Where you're getting these new cards with new spots, like new spots to grow beans or new spots to roast beans or new places to ship beans to, you're always having to cover up some of your old spots. You're always trying to balance out, okay, I want this card here, but what can I lose from my old cards that won't, hurt me too much? Then after you do your drafting, both players are going to take their turns planting beans, drying them, roasting them, and shipping them off to coffee companies. And the winner is the one who basically supplied the most coffee companies across the world. And then also there's some extra points you get for having a certain number of beans at the end of the game. So Cafe is a neat little strategy game where the main point of interest is going to be when you pick up those new cards, how you're going to add them to your city to get the new spots while covering up things that don't hurt you too much. It works pretty well 2 to 4 players. A 4-player might be getting a little bit long for my taste, especially considering it's a little bit more multiplayer solitaire. It's not an overly competitive game. So I'd say it's a perfect game for 2 to 3 players. Brew some coffee, just have your little cities, try to make some coffee, send them out to the world and have a good time. Up next here is Codenames, and the premise of Codenames is so simple that if you haven't heard of it yet, you're going to think, wow, like that hasn't been done before? Codenames is one of these games where you're going to have a group of words that you want your teammate to guess. And the way you're going to get them to guess these words is by giving them clues with other words. And the way you do this is really flexible. So let's say you have 6 words left for your teammate to guess. Well, you can give them a clue and say it refers to only 2 of those 6 words. And they're trying to figure out with your clue which 2 it refer to. But if you can think of a really good connection for 4 different words, you could say, hey, this clue applies to 4 different words out there. It's also kind of interesting because the words you're trying to get your teammate to guess are laid out kind of randomly before you. And then you have a reference card that says which of those words you want them to guess. There's also words out there that if your teammate says, you automatically lose. But then also your opponent, you have an opponent at the same time giving clues to their teammates. You're taking turns. They're giving clues, trying to get them to guess certain words out there, but you're all working from the same kind of word base. So it has kind of an interesting dynamic where you and your opponent, there's one of you giving a clue, taking turns, and one of them, you're trying to get your teammate to guess your word before they can get their teammate to guess their words. Okay, so I just gave you one party game and I figured I might as well just go right on to another party game. So next up here, we have the game of Just One. Just One is an awesome fast party game for 3 to 7 players that I've honestly been able to modify and play groups up to like 10 or 15 before. The way it works is one person is trying to guess the word that everyone else knows, and everyone else is going to write down a clue for them, which you think would be really simple, right? Every other person gets to write down a clue for that one person to guess. But the thing is, anyone who writes down duplicate clues has to get their clues thrown out. So rather than the players trying to give really, really overt, obvious clues, often players are trying to give a little more subtle clues, and sometimes they try to do that and they still cancel each other out. But the real fun part is that often players try to go really off the beaten path, right? So their clues don't get canceled out, but then the clues get even more obscure. So you might get like, a handful of clues that don't seem related at all when you first read them. This is why I think it's such a fun game that you could even modify to play at bigger groups, because if you have 10 people all throwing in a clue, you might get 6 or 7 of those that cancel out. And then once again, people are going to try to think of these wildly obscure clues so they don't get canceled. You just might have 10 insanely different clues given that all somewhat relate back and point to the central word that we all started with. Up next here, I have one more party game for you, and that is the Chameleon. In the Chameleon, there's going to be a big card in the center of the table that has a whole bunch of nouns written on. Then all the players have a little reference card. You roll some dice, and depending on what the dice roll, you can see in the reference card which one of those words is going to be used this round. It sounds confusing, but it's really, really not. You roll the dice, you say, okay, we're doing this line, this row. You look out there and you say, cool, we're doing countries, and it's Italy. So then all the players on the table are going to give a hint related to that word. Now, I said all the players, but one of the players, in fact, does not know the clue is Italy, because when everyone was dealt a little reference card that round, one of the players just has a card that says, you are the chameleon. If you says you are the chameleon, you have no clue what the dice mean. You have to act like you know what those dice refer to. So everyone else is going to be giving clues to Italy. And as a chameleon, you have to pay attention and try to figure out from their clues, maybe what country they're referring to, maybe give a clue that's not too vague, not too specific, just try to blend in with everyone else. At the end of each round, all the players, including the chameleon, because no one knows who the chameleon is, discuss amongst each other and try to figure out which one of them is the chameleon. Now, you might think this is really easy, right? Because people could give really obvious clues and just say, well, I knew what it was, the chameleon didn't know what it was, so obviously it's this person. But here's the trick. After they identify the chameleon, if they can figure out who it is, if the chameleon knows which clue, which word it was in the center, they still win the round. So it really forces the players that aren't the chameleon to think of some clever clues, because if you're not the chameleon and it's Italy and you just say Rome, well, yeah, everyone knows that you're not the chameleon, but at the same time, you just ruin the round because the chameleon knows it's Italy. So it makes you think of clues that maybe are clever or subtle enough, but there are these hilarious moments where a player is not the chameleon. They give a really good, clever clue. No one else gets the clue. So of course, when it comes to accuse everyone, they all accuse you because you said some clue and you're trying to defend yourself. I'm not the bad guy. I promise, but you can't give too much information. If you give too much information, the chameleon figures it out. By the way, maybe not the game for your group if you don't love lying deception games, but if you do, it's a really, really fun one. Now, if you've watched my channel much before, you probably already knew the next game was going to make the list. You've just been waiting around for me to say it. And I'll just go ahead and put it right here. And that is The Crew. The Crew is one of my favorite games ever. It just uses a simple idea of trick taking, where if you hand a card, if you play blue, Everyone has to play blue if they can, then the high blue wins. But what makes it so interesting is that it turns this classic idea of trick taking into a cooperative game where you are all on a team trying to get certain team members to win certain cards. So unlike lots of trick taking games where you just want to win as many tricks as possible, since you're all playing on the same team, you either all win together or all lose together. So you might see, okay, I can win my card pretty easily this round, but my teammate over there needs to win a yellow 7, and I have a yellow 8, and the yellow 9. That's dangerous. I might accidentally win the yellow 7 away from them since I have the highest 2 cards of that color. So you're going to try to figure out how you can play out your cards in such a way that will help them win their yellow 7 without you accidentally winning and basically making the whole team lose. It is such a fascinating game that works really well in groups of gamers and non-gamers alike. It just has this great effect of the first couple rounds you play, people are like trying to wrap their minds around what's going on. Then you get a few rounds in, everyone's like, well, let's deal up another one. Let's deal up another one. It starts getting really interesting to figure out how you're going to get those particular missions done. The game actually comes with tons of built-in variety just depending on what cards are flipped over, but also there's an entire book included with 50 different missions, 50 different types of way that you can play the game. Now, the next game on this list, I had no clue was going to be on this list until I started doing a little research trying to see which games I liked that were also in this price range, and I didn't even know this existed. The next game is Azul Mini. Now, I already knew about Azul. Azul is just kind of a classic strategy game where you're just trying to pick up tiles that fit into rows on your board, and then depending on how you fill those rows up, you slide them over and score points in combinations when you form groups. It's a pretty interesting game how the drafting works out there. I think I've mentioned before on the channel, I do prefer it at like 2 players or 3 and not as much at 4, but it's just a really good solid strategy game. But apparently there's a mini version of it that's smaller, which I think is even kind of cooler because it takes up less room on your shelf and be easier to travel with, and it's cheaper. So I didn't know this thing existed. I was trying to research games again that I already kind of liked that might be in this price range. And I was like, I wonder if Azul costs less than $20. And apparently Azul Mini is a thing. So if you can find Azul Mini and you don't already own Azul, it might be a perfect game for you. Now, the second to last game is Forbidden Island. And Forbidden Island is a really fun cooperative game where basically you're on an island trying to get some treasure pieces before the island sinks. Yes, like the island you're on is going to be slowly, tiles are going to be flipping over, which is going to show that they're now covered with water. So as you play the game, you're going to be losing parts of your island, so you won't be able to move around as much. And your goal is to, as a team, cooperatively work together to get all the treasure gathered up and then get back to your helicopter pad and basically get out there before the whole thing sinks. It's a pretty simple version of what's become a pretty popular way to do cooperative games. Basically, on your turn, you're going to be doing a couple actions to try to keep the island from sinking or pick up treasures. And then at the end of every player's turn, you're going to draw some cards and bad stuff will happen. More stuff will sink. And the next player will go, they'll take a couple actions trying to save a little of the island, get a few more treasures. End of their turn, they'll draw a few cards and also make more bad stuff happen. Then one really fun element of all these types of cooperative games is that each player kind of has their own special ability or special power. So depending on what color you play, you'll be able to do something special. Like one character can just use a helicopter and fly across the map all the time. Another player can move in diagonals. Another player can kind of get 2 places that are getting flooded fixed up at the same time. So everyone kind of has their own special skill they bring to the team. Now we have arrived at the final game on the list, and I honestly had no clue you could get this game for $20 or less, so I'm super excited about this. But it's one of my favorite games of all time, and that is Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Duel is an incredible head-to-head 2-player only game. You're going to play over 3 rounds, and each one of those rounds there's going to be certain cards that are face up you can take, but as you take the cards, you're going to be revealing the cards that are underneath them, kind of like when you play solitaire and you take a card off the top and the card underneath that flip over. What makes it really interesting though is there's 3 different ways to win in Seven Wonders Duel. One way to win is just at the end of the game have the most victory points. So the player that maybe has the best economy, the most resources being produced is going to basically be able to get the most victory points by the end of the game. But you see, the game might not even make it to that point because the other player might be going for scientific or military victory. If you trigger those forms of victory, the game ends immediately. You don't even play it out. The person automatically wins. So the whole game becomes this great balance of both players at any time if you're going for any 3 of the victory conditions. You don't exactly know what your opponent's always shooting for. You want to kind of leave yourself that ability that if the game goes the distance, you have a shot in the victory points, but also you might be realizing there's a game behind the victory points. You might just kind of shoot the moon and go for the military or the scientific as well. So Seven Wonders Duel, easy addition to this list, one of my favorite games of all time. I'm just super happy that it's out there for $20. So there you have my favorite games to get for yourself or maybe as a gift for someone else if you're working at the budget of $20 or less. Of course, if you have any suggestions that you'd like to add to the list, feel free to add those in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.